Welcome to Headlines. This is David Lichtenstein here in the Yeshiva Shalmaila.
Nice to be back after a week off. You know, it's a lot of work to do these every week. So I would like to try to get some substitute, either Rabbanim or other Askanim, etc. So if you have a suggestion, somebody you think would be good at it, please call us or email us, and we'll definitely take it under advisement. This week we're going to have a wonderful program. We're going to be talking about kashrus and Shechitah. We're going to be speaking to Rabbi Chaim Boruch Kushner, our very famous Shochet for many years, an Isaac in kashrus. We will be speaking to Rabbi Deren. We're going all around. We're going to Lakewood, Monsey, Chabad. We're going to be speaking to Rabbi Mordechai Spiegal, a Gerach Chassid who runs a shul in Lakewood, is a Shochet for many decades. We will be speaking to Rabbi Yudel, Shain, international kashrus consultant, and we will, lastly, Rabbi Baruch Epstein, who runs actually a supermarket that sells kosher meat, and we'll be talking to him. And the topic is going to be Bais Yosef, Chassidisher, Litvish, OU, even Hebrew National. What is the difference between the different shchitas? Are you getting your value? We will have Rabbi Shain, interestingly, talking about he will actually rate the different shlachtaiser. And now I want to start off with an opening. This is clearly not an attempt to either diminish or any particular shechita. It's more about knowing where are you getting a value and what are you as a consumer paying for, both in, primarily in kashrus. We're not going to be talking about quality of food. We're going to be talking about in kashrus. This is a very important program to anybody who consumes meat.
Now for our weekly riddle. This week is Parshas Tzitzis, so we're going to ask two riddles for Parshas Tzitzis. One is, the Gemara says by Tzitzis, your person Zekeli Van Vayu, so you should have Tzitzis Noah and Talis Noah. Having a nice Talis is Zekeli Van Vayu. If you have a nice Talis, you have nice Tzitzis, you have, just together. It makes a beautiful mitzvah. So the question is, why don't we say the same thing? Zekeli Van Vayu, you should have a mezuzah noah, and together with the mezuzah noah, you should have a Bais noah. And we don't see anybody says that you should have a Bais noah as Zekeli Van Vayu of the mezuzah. What's the difference between tzitzis on the talis or mezuzah on the Bais? Here's another question, and this question is from the Magen Avram, the great Magen Avram. He says that the Shulchan Aruch, I don't have a Shulchan Aruch with me, I'm traveling today, but I think it's Siman Ches says that the Bais Yosef says if you take your talis off, afilu daite lachsa, even if you want to immediately put it back on, you're going to the bathroom, you take your talis off, what's the halacha? You make another bracha, even if your mind is to put it right back on. Frek the Magen Avram, he says, so what's it different? By sukkah, if you left the sukkah and you want to come back, the Shulchan Aruch says, the Bais Yosef says, you don't make another bracha. It's not a hefsek. You want to come back. But by tzitzis, he says, if you took it off, even if you want to put it back on, it's considered a hefsek. When you intend to do it again, by sukkah, it's not a hefsek, but by tzitzis, it is a hefsek. What is the difference? This is the Magen Avram's question on the great Bais Yosef. Do you have an answer?
Before we go to our program, I would like to say a short word on the Parsha. The Meraglim, the Chet of the Meraglim, which because of that, they did not go into Eretz Yisrael. And it's one of the two times where the Rabbeinu Shalom, once by the Egel, he says, Heref mimeni v'ashmidem, I will destroy them. And here he does it again. The only two places, there's something particularly pernicious about the Chet HaMeraglim. And I would suggest to you, the Chet HaMeraglim was ultimately about, they said, Loi Nuchal. We can't. We just can't. We're not able to. The little engine that couldn't. And here's what's so ironic. When you look about why couldn't the Meraglim, why couldn't they? Why did they say, I can't? And it's important because so many of us at different points in our lives have been stuck by some type of a challenge where we just looked at it in the eye and we said, you know what, I can't. We went home to our mother, to our father, to our friends, to our spouses, sometimes just in solitude, and we just shed a tear, just like the Meraglim did. And they said, we can't, we're terrified. And I put to you, if you had to name one cause for a person's inability to become who they're supposed to be, what has stopped you, what has stopped me from ever becoming what we were supposed to be? If we had to point the finger at one thing, I would say it's fear. Loi lefachid klalik, Rav Nachman said, Loi nuchal, we can't, we're afraid. And let's look at the fear. Let's look at most of our fears. Look at the Meraglim. What did they say? They said they went to Eretz Yisrael and they saw Arim Bitzurais Gedailes Ma'od, great fortress cities. The Gam, among them, there were also Yelidei Anak, giants, sons of giants, Re'inu Sham. And then when they're criticized, they come back and they double down. Look at this. He says, Kalam. Now everybody, it went from, look how in our minds, how fears just keep on growing and growing. They become bigger in our imagination. Kalam, now it didn't say some of them. Anshe Midais. Rashi says, what does Anshe mean? They were giants. Imagine, that chabura you're going to give, that job you're going to take, everybody around you is 10 times your size. Giants. You're 5'9", and they're not 5'11". They're 12 feet 11. Every one of them is bigger than an NBA player or stronger than an NFL player. And it wasn't like, they had a 2-inch edge on us or a 10 IQ or a little bit of an edge. We're grasshoppers next to them. And this is what they thought of us. They were terrified. They were huge. They looked at us as tiny little ants, Rashi says. And then in Devarim, it keeps getting bigger. This fear just keeps on morphing and metamorphosizing and growing. What happened to the Betsurais Gedailes Moed, their mighty fortresses? It's like they had somebody, from the United States, from Northrop Grumman, building them fortresses. All they used was sticks and stones in those days. Now it got even bigger in Devarim. It becomes Arim Gedailes, big cities, Ubetsurais Bashamayim. They reached the heavens. When we take our fears at night under our covers, they just keep growing and growing and growing, and we keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Now let's imagine if you could think of what the other person thought of you. You're terrified of this huge monster with endless resources. Now look at the other side. In the Haftarah this week, it says when the spies, they went to Rachav, and they said, what were we thinking about when we heard Klal Yisrael was coming? Right? Remember, the spies went to Eretz Yisrael. They saw these huge... Now, what were the people in Eretz Yisrael who they thought we looked like grasshoppers? They said to them, we looked like grasshoppers. What were they thinking about us? These giants? They said, Vanishma vayimas levavenu, she writes. She says, we heard what they had accomplished, the Jews. Vayimas levavenu. We melted. We became like water. We fell down on the floor in fright. There was here's what's so ironic. In my eyes, in your eyes, the fears, they get bigger and bigger. The people are stronger, and in their eyes, they think punkt verkehrt. So what is it? It's all a myth. Most of our fears, right, are eingeretz. And if we wrote them down on a piece of paper and we said, what are you afraid of? A, B, and we started reasoning with our fears, write them down on paper, we start to see they're really silly. That person you're terrified of, I guarantee you, I promise you, he gets up in the morning, he puts on his pants one leg at a time, right? He gets up in the morning and he says, oh my gosh, what a day. How am I going to accomplish what I have to do today? Impossible. Just like you. Here's a story. There was a city in the Midwest, Omaha, and it's one of the great train depots in the country. It's sort of in the center west of the country. So in one of these great train yards where they transport these cars, of grain and coal and all kinds of commodities across the whole continent, there was one guy We'll call him Simon, and he was negative guy. He's the type of guy. He said, let's go for a walk tomorrow. He'll say it was going to rain. He said, let's go play baseball. They're going to beat us. Let's do everything he had a negative story for. He was Mr. Fearful. So what did he do? His job was to clean out the rail cars after they would come in. They would come in from San Francisco. He would sweep them out. Boom. And he was always sure something terrible would happen to him. One day he sweeps out this car. It's come in from someplace down south. And it was a refrigerated car. And on a refrigerated car, you don't want to get locked in, God forbid. So he put usually you put a beam over there. This time he didn't put it right correctly. However, he tried to keep the door open. And he's sweeping. Suddenly he hears a rolling sound, the door, and a click. And the door is closed, and there's no handle from the inside, and it's a refrigerated car, and the next stop is in Alberta. It's 24 hours away, and he realizes he's going to die. He's in a refrigerated car, goes down to 34 degrees. It's the summer. He's wearing shirt sleeves. Maybe he's wearing shorts and sneakers, and he realizes a person will basically die at 34 outside or 35 for 24 hours. So he sits down on the corner, he starts to cry. And then he takes a piece of paper out of his pocket, a little pad and a pen, and he writes a letter to his family. He writes, I loved everybody. I did my best. I was always afraid. And you know what? The worst really happened. I got locked in a refrigerated car because I wasn't careful enough. And I always knew it was going to happen. I knew that life ends badly. And I knew despite what people think, your worst fears come true. So here's my goodbye. And he writes a long 5 to each of his children. Okay. And they come to Alberta. They're emptying the cars. They see one car. They're about to, leading the cars, and they see a guy there in a coma. And they take him out and they rush him to the hospital. And the doctors are saying, they said, the man is in a coma in a refrigerated car, but we don't understand why. He obviously was preparing for death because the refrigeration in the car wasn't on the entire time. Right? So he went into a coma, a cold-induced coma, in an unrefrigerated car. And what does that mean? If you believe your fears, they do become true. To quote who is it? Ford. He said, Henry Ford, he said, if you believe you can, or you believe you can't, you're right. So 2 times Rabbi Shalom gets mad at Klal Yisrael. One time is when they do the Egel, terrible things, the Kaifrin Kaviyachal. And in this parsha, he gets mad at them again for a different kfira. They stopped believing in themselves. They said, Loi nuchal, we will allow fear to stop us from becoming who we are. So if we want to take a message, a page against the Meraglim, what do? We write down our fears and we say, there's really no corner that can stop us. A person doesn't ever have to be cornered. There's always another opportunity. 3 times in the Torah talks about getting cornered. Loisechala pas sadcha, right? By a field, you can't shave it down. Let it grow. Let it blossom. Loisechala pas roishcha, pei is harosh. The 3rd time in this week's parsha, hakanaf psil tcheles, on the corner of your beged, it should sprout forth tzitzis. And what does that mean? Why is the Torah telling us? You think you're cornered? You think it's an end? You reached a corner? There's no place forward? No, it's not a corner. It's a new junction. There's a new opportunity there. So every quarter, something has to sprout out of the corner. We look past corners. We look past edges. We're never over the edge. We're just opening a new window. The tzitzis habeged, they sprout forward. You thought it was the end, it wasn't. The tzitzis hasadeh, the corner of the sadeh, pas sadcha, pas reishcha. A yid never ever has a corner. That is the tikkun of the Chet HaMeraglim. Write down your worst fears. Say, how are they really so scary? Is it really a dead end? Or can I just use it as an opportunity, a junction, to learn something new, to go past, conquer that fear? That is the message of the Meraglim. Let's go to our wonderful guests. We have on the phone with us Rabbi Baruch Chaim Kushner, a Talmud of Tells, Long Beach, South Fallsburg, Lakewood. He's a Shochet for over 36 years. Welcome, Rabbi Kushner. I'm sorry, 26 years. Welcome, Rabbi Kushner.
Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi David.
Sir, Rabbi Chaim, tell us a little bit about what do you know about Chassidisher Shechitah?
Chassidisher Shechitah is not any different than any other Shechitah. The types of Shechitah, of Chassidisher Shechitah, I would say would mean that the Shochet is a Chassidisher. And he noyig like minhagim from Chassidisher Yidden. And he's machmer on certain things that others wouldn't be machmer on. That's basically what it should be. That's basically what it's all about.
Are there any nafkaminas in halacha? Like, originally the Baal Shem and the Magid, they made a big tumult about Sakinim, Latushim, etc.
Yeah. There was one machlokes about that, which is interesting because the Torah held with the Sakinim Latushim. The Alter Rebbe in his life, the Balatanya in his letters brings down the Goyin that he also holds like that. And the Pinchas Kovetz, which Chassidisher, was against it. So it's not a clear-cut definition in the Chassidisher Shechitah. The machlokes then was be'ikeh because there was the Chassidisher Shochet made their own Shechitah nefredes from the regular Kehilisher Shechitah. And with that, it was like making a pgam on the Friedrich Shechitah. So that's where a lot of people were against it because you're being machilaz on the Friedrich. And that was, this is only a chumrah, but it's so they didn't want to take away from the Friedrich. But the Goyen held from it, and today everybody has Husukinim with Latashim. Everybody's using them.
And are there any nafkaminas in the bedikas that they do, in the reyes that they do by Chassidisher or not Chassidisher Shechitah?
Not as far as I know, I don't know of anything that the Chassidisher are more makbid than the Litvish or than Yeshivisher. I mean, the Chassidisher, every place, every shtetl, every Malkim had their Menhagim, that's for sure. You had the Hungarians had their Menhagim and the Litvish and the Russisher, everybody had their own different Menhagim. But to say that Chassidisher are Chassidim, no, I would not say so.
And you're saying today everybody uses the Sakinim Lutashim, the thin knives. I think the Aruch HaShulchan already brings in Siman Yud Ches that he says today everybody does it.
Everybody uses it. There was it was not a shaila in kashrus really. It was a shaila of being pagin and the Friedrich Mahalach. That's all.
So is the whole difference then that whether somebody is there who has a long beard and a gartel and somebody has a short beard and not a gartel?
In halacha, no.
So is that the whole difference? That here there's a guy from Lakewood or from some other community, and over here it's somebody with a gartel. Is that today the essence of the difference of a Chassidisher Shechitah?
Well, in honest truth, what you're saying is true. It just can't be said that way because they want to have somebody that fills with the Chassidisher Mahalach and Leben. So basically, I'll give you just a few points that's on the top of my head. In Shechitah itself, the Chassidim are more makbid, the Hungarian more, I should say. I can't say Chassidim. It depends which Chassidim also are makbid on Maritas Noitzes, to flick the feathers before Shechitah. Now, Bemis Maritas Noitzes are halacha. The question is only when do you need it. So the Chassidim were more machmer even when it's very small feathers, and the Litvish and the Russisher weren't so machmer when it's very, very small feathers. So others says the Ramah says not to do it. The Ramah says in fact he's not allowed to do it. The Dr. Moshe brings down that it's an issue because it's Rabbi Chaim, but it's not needed. So it's brought down in Chov Dalid, or the Simcha Chov Dalid in Britis Noitzes, and in Chov Gimel is brought down only that you should make a shvil, that you shouldn't cut the Noitzes together with the Shechitah. basically, the only thing only thing that I could think of that the Chassidim are makbid and etzem Shechitah is nitas noitis, and also they're also makbid that the Shochem should know well the Simla Chadasha to the Tvua Shor. They wanted that the Shochem should be double in the Lashon for Tvua Shor because it's up to Kabbalah from Baal Shem Tov or something from Tzadikim, whatever. I think Baal Shem Tov, that whoever has the Tvua Shor's Lashon, the Simla Chadasha on the Lashon won't be nichshel in Hirit Shechitah. But the other literature more based off it. But Simla Chadasha is a staple poetic in Shechitah by everybody. No one's arguing with that. Just that they wanted it more. They shouldn't look into other svarim. The only thing that's hard, Simla Chadasha and Litas Noitis and Sakim Lutoshim, I could say is maybe Koselberg has their own hakpad, not the shech, only if you're holding it on the hand. But that's a different reason. That's nothing to do with that in Shechitah. That's because they don't want to, they have it, because the Alter Koselberg Rebbe was marked in that because he didn't want, it should be like a mass production kind of thing. I presume. In other words, but not in the Hilchot Shechitah, that I can't think of anything else that would be a difference between Chassidim and Misnagdim from Amo. The Chassidim Be'ikah started this Indian in America is because the Shochem with our Litvish Shochem weren't makbid to have a beard and payers, and they wanted the tznius of the Indian or the takonis with tznius from the wife in the house should be. They wanted that the Hungarians and other were makbid that the lady should shave. The wife should shave, and others were makbid not to go with a certain shadloch, and that the wife shouldn't drive. But that all came later. In Satmar, the Marshal, they were more makbid that they should have the day against Zionis. In Skver, the Marshal, the only makbid hakbad is that they're different than anybody else, that the Shochet shouldn't drive. What should they want the Shochet to go to a council, and it should be makbid go to mikveh. And he should have the Levush of a chassid. A Levush means from inside out and outside in, without a hakima. And today now there's a new thing that anybody who has a smartphone can check. And the Lubavitch, they want machbet and all these things. They want machbet more that the chassid should be someone that learns Chassidus.
So, Rabbi Kushner, what is the difference in price between Chassidisher Shechitah and not Chassidish? Do you have any idea now?
Well, David, if you could find me not a Chassidisher Shechitah, let me get it. I don't see it. Everyone dropped out of it. The OU, the Starkey, everybody dropped out.
Why did they drop out?
Well, that's already political. I can't answer that question. In other words, they took over, so finish it. There's nothing else. There is nothing else. I mean, in chicken, I'll top on them.
Why today is there only Chassidisher Shechitah? What's the logic? In New York, at least.
Because of the consumers. The consumer wants it. First of all, most people understand that.
I'm saying, do most people care about whether the wife of the Shochet shaved their head, or in Skver that the Shochet doesn't drive? Like, is this to people an important issue in the Yerushalayim of the Shochet?
I'll tell you, in those kehilas that were brought up, that you're not a full Jew unless you do that, I guess so. In other words, let me explain what I mean. In let's say in Germany, 150 years ago, if it would be a shochet that didn't have a beard, I'm sure no one would have a problem with it. Why? Because no one had a beard. So what's the problem? But in a place where everybody had a beard and someone didn't have a beard, so that shows that the Yerushalayim is lacking according to the standards that they wanted, right? So it depends in the place. It depends where, how, when, and where. So now, when the Hungarians came to America, they saw a shochet without a beard, so they were like they never saw such a thing, never heard of such a thing. So it became possible for those places that they never had a problem with having a beard. In other words, those places where they always shaved, it was not a problem. The Frumiyitas without a beard also. What's the problem? It's enough community. Now in Hungary and in those kind of Chassidish places, the shochet went like the Rav. Come on, you like the second and command like the Rav. You went with a Streimel even though the Amoinam did not go Streimel in Hungary. The only place with Amoinam when the Streimel was in Yerushalayim. but in Hungary, but about Pasha the Balabas is that go a Steimel. But Shochet hat gegangen a Steimel. A Shochet went with a beard and face, out. It was different than a Balabas. It was considered someone that had to be more nidder, more choshev looking, and more attacker. His attacker should be cheshev. So that's how it was by the Chassidisher.
I think that when we say that Chassidisher Shechitah is better, if people think that it's because there were chumras in the Shechitah, which I think most people believe is the case, which there aren't any, as you say.
Well,
it's one thing. Rabbi Kushner, let me conclude. Yeah. If people think that it's because of chumras in the Shechitah, it's one thing. But if somebody thinks it's because a certain community has a different level of Yiras Shamayim, so we're not eating Litvish Shechitah because their wives don't shave their heads and the men do drive. I mean, none of these things, they're not even deraisis, they're not the rabbanon.
You have a kasher, how could it be that he should be heat, that these minhagim are more chomer than deraisis? Lie, that's the fact. Rabbi
Kushner, let me ask you another thing. The essence of the machlokes, which was the Baal Shem and the Magid with the Sakinim Elutashim, is brought in the Paiskim of that time that it's because of Tzar Balachayim, right? That they said that the Sakinim Ha'avim, right, were halakim but not chadim. They cut with. They didn't cut with. Rabbi Kushner, I have a question. Okay, so they said that there was the chumra of and Yiras Shamayim of Tzar Balachayim, right? They bring from the Darkei Moshe and others that the chumra of Tzar Balachayim by Shechitah. Yeah. My question is, when I saw some of the films of that they put out with Chassidisher Schlachteisen, the quote-unquote Chassidisher Schlachteisen, and the reason Peter put films out is because the Tzar Balachayim was horrific. If we wanted to be makbid on the Yiras Shamayim of the Sakinim Melutashim, which was the Yisaidim, and we wanted to have real Chassidisher Shechitah, wouldn't the Tzar Balachayim become... isn't that the essence of it? Or, for example, you go sometimes where they're doing a kaparis, and you see the chickens are out there 3 days before, they're not fed, they don't have water, they're karev to misa, and they take these chickens for kaparis. Shouldn't Chassidisher Shechitah say, wait, the whole Yisod of Chassidisher Shechitah is Tzar Balachayim. This is the biggest Tzar Balachayim imaginable. Haven't we somehow distorted the whole message of what the Baal Shem and the Magid and the Baal Tanya writing out, and we created a mavucha where we have the minig without any of the message that came along with it?
I agree to most of what you just now said. In fact, any Chassidisher Shochet, I'm saying Chassidisher Bedavke, that works in the Schlachtheit in the times of before Yom Kippur, from Tzem Gedalia till after Yom Kippur, will be very negative to what's going on with Kapochas, because we get all those chickens that people make kaparis, and it comes to us, and we see what these chickens look like. It's gefährlich.
Define gefährlich. What does gefährlich mean?
Gefährlich means that most of them are dead before Shechitah. Most of them they stink gefährlich. They're not fed. They're not that clean. Most of them are treifus. Mamish most. I'm not being megazim. I could prove everything I'm saying now. That most of them are treifus. Very few of them come out kosher, and I would say it's very inhumane and very unhealthy to give these chickens to people to eat.
So this is the hepech of what the purpose of Chassidisher Shechitah was, according to the Baal Tanya.
That's a different Indian. It's the way the Indian of kaparis is a different problem completely. It's the way it's being done. People want to make money, so they make kaparis in the streets and thus. That was never the way. That's the way it was done. You went to the Shochet and he shechted it. You took it home and you kashed it like you kashed all your chickens, and then you fight it, and that was it. It was a regular chicken like every other chicken. They're making a business out of it, and because of the business, it's nothing to do with the Shechitah. It has to do with the business is making the Tzar Balachayim. There's nothing to do with Shechitah now.
I understand that, but when we shecht a chicken that has gone through all these Yisurim, right? It's the word
of torture.
Yeah, so my point is that you want to be makbid on Chassidisher Shechitah, which is Tzar B'Lachaim, so you starve a chicken for a week, you don't let it go to the bathroom for a week, you don't give it water for a week, and then you have the Chassidisher Shechitah. It seems if I was the person eating this chicken, I would say, this is the most un-Chassidisher Shechitah I ever had in my life, and I understand it's not the Shechitah itself, it's the message.
I'm not going to argue on that point.
Rabbi Kushner, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, that's welcome.
We have on the phone with us from Lakewood, New Jersey, Rabbi Yehuda Shain. He's a Talmud of Beis Medrash Gavaya, Talmud of Shnei Katrul Zechrein Levracha. He's a Musmach Rabbi Leo Levine. He learned Nikur, Kabbalah from Rabbi Landesman. He's a consultant to the international kashrus industry. Welcome, Rabbi Shain.
Shalom Aleichem.
So, Rabbi Shain, could you, as an expert in kashrus, tell us as consumers, we walk into a store, you have Chassidisher Shechitah, OU, you have all kinds of private Shechitahs, you have Bais Yosef. We don't know.
We're talking about poultry, or we're talking about meat, or should we start?
Both. We don't know. I'm an ignorant. I don't know. I don't. Kamitz Aleph, Kamitz Beis Bo. I know nothing. I'm an AB Siderian. Walk me through as a consumer, an expert in. I know nothing. You're an expert in this. What should we, people who are Yerei Shamayim, they want to be kashrus, what is better, what is worse, what do they pay extra for, where are they being, necessarily paying and not getting a value for? Educate us.
Okay, so let me go back with a number of years ago, let's say about 35 years ago, there was available to the kashrus industry, there was available glatt, non-glatt, and some Bais Yosef. There was very little of Bais Yosef, considerably because there weren't that many Svardim. The OU basically was the one that was given Ashgach on a lot of the plants besides other Rabbanim. They decided about some 20-plus years ago, 25 years ago, that they're eliminating, they're not giving any more Ashgach on non-glatt. They're only giving on glatt, which basically has caused a tremendous problem in the pricing of meat and what we get. And I'll explain why. The average non-veal beef shechita in the USA, when you make a shechita, you have glatt and Bais Yosef is between 12 and 18% of the day's shechita. Non-glatt is 25 to 30%. If they would have kept that non-glatt, all these people living out in the West, or let's call them the supermarket kosher consumer that knows nothing with no glatt, they would have taken that 25-30%, and that would satisfy the amount of meat they need. So first of all, we would have, because of the labor and the shechita and everything else, we would be able to bring down our costs tremendously. And there would not be a shortage of any type of meat of the glatt and the Bais Yosef, because all of these other consumers would fall under this other thing of the non-glatt 25-30%, which I've addressed this to the OU about 3 years ago, that they really should. So they said, well, that the OU should start a non-glatt the same way like the Rabbanut in Eretz Yisrael. You have the Eda, you have Rabbi Reuben, you have Rabbi Landa, you have Sheris. Those are all the glatt and the Bais Yosef and everything else like it. Who's covering for the consumer in Eretz Yisrael the non-glatt? That the Rabbanut does. And it's 25-30% of every shechita you have that. We would have that in America. We would solve our problem pricing and amount of meat that we have available for the kosher consumer. We would never run short, even at Yom Tov time. And basically what the OU says, they don't want to go now back to non-glatt once they moved up to glatt, and they said somebody else should do it. I said, but if you look at the kosher consumer outside in the United States, the golden standard of kosher to them is OU. I said, if you don't have an OU on that piece of meat, on the non-glatt piece of meat, you can't put on any other kind of hashgacha. They will not accept it. But
who
that never happened.
Rabbi Shain, so
yes.
Who does non-glatt today? Just who
the only one that's doing non-glatt today is basically what is it called? Hebrew National.
So is Hebrew National, and I know nothing about Hebrew National. Is Hebrew National kosher but non-glatt?
Correct.
And do they have reliable shechtim? Like if somebody was in a desperate pinch, could they eat Hebrew National?
It's a good question, because the real issue of Hebrew National is not the shachtim. The shachtim are of a good quality shachtim, At least it changed when in the last couple of years. It's been a good quality shachtim. But they have two things which they do, which makes a problem. One thing is that because of bloodshot, that the by Shechitahs, there's a lot by the non-kosher Shechitah, by the treifas, nevelas, they shoot the behemoth in the brain, and then they'll cut the throat or whatever else they'll do. So there is no bloodshot because the blood does not travel in and discolor the meat. The Hebrew National, where they were doing the shechting, the kill, basically the shechting by P&M or other companies, very good companies, they were very concerned about the bloodshot. So what they want to have is they wanted them to shoot the behemoth. So that Moshe has a tshuva on that if you shoot it like not right by the Shechitah, but a little bit after that, which others have touched up, I don't think that Moshe has an exact amount, a half a minute or a minute, there's no problem using it. But over there, right after the Shechitah, basically, I'd say 15, 20 seconds later, they shoot it.
When you say what does it mean they shoot it? I don't know what
they take a bolt and they shoot it into the brain, that all function of the animal, the heart and everything stops at that point. So now no blood is going to go out, nothing happens, everything becomes dead end at that point.
So they do that post Shechitah, you're saying?
Post Shechitah. In the regular treifa kill, nevela, they do it prior to Shechitah.
So
that is the reason why, if you have in Europe and all these other countries, they want to ban Shechitah because you don't want to stun the animal. They call that stunning. They don't want to stun the animal before Shechitah.
So Hebrew National does that, but
they do it after Shechitah. And the Moshe writes that you could do it after Shechitah.
Does any other shlachtais do that? That's a glatt shlach.
No. Nobody else is doing it. There's one more item that the U.S. government wants them, the USDA wants them to wash down the meat to prevent pathogens. They want them to wash down the meat with hot water, which makes a problem of before Melicha to have hot water. So what they're doing by Hebrew National is they wash it down from the non-kosher half of the behemoth down to the kosher. So when the water reaches down to the kosher part, it has cooled down that much that it's not no yatsa lettuce or anything close to that, so they feel it's not a problem. But most people don't want to accept that because maybe it is hot. Maybe the guy moved the hose down. We don't have that tight of a control. He says he has a control, so that's why the frumma people will not use that thing. But to say that it's a non-kosher shechita, chas v'sholom.
Okay.
So now we move back to over here to our glatt and Bais Yosef, Shechitah, etc. So once the OU stopped doing that, we have this type of thing. As time went, they started pushing into the industry that we have to have Chassidisher Shechitah. What is Chassidisher Shechitah? So I've approached a number of them because I visited a tremendous amount of plants in my life, and basically it's not mikveh, because I've showed these so-called Chassidische Shechitahs that they are shechting even when the people did not go to the mikveh. Like I was in one poultry Shechitah where I asked the Hamachshir over there, I said, do you insist that your shechtim go to the mikveh? He says, unbedingt, they have to go to the mikveh, you can't shecht for me. So I said, how many shechtim do you have today? He says, 5. I said, well, in the mikveh there was only one wet towel this morning.
Right, and what you're referring to is the Mordechai in the beginning of
correct.
Chulin.
Yes, that's Mordechai.
So even though the Mordechai says like Kaimelan Kavasei.
Yes, but I looked at it. It's not that I hold that a Shochet has to go even because of the Mordechai, but I asked the Rov that's taking care of the Shechitah, if you insist they have to go to the thing, you can't accept that Shechitah if they didn't go to the mikveh.
Right.
And he did accept it. So I told him, I said, you had 4 years shachtim, definitely didn't go to the mikveh today. How are you accepting it? He says, what, I should tell my tzibur that we don't have any chickens this week? I said, that's correct, which they didn't.
Well, but even Rabbi Shain, just respectfully, that the Mordechai says it's a problem like Tavel will carry. So it could be that they didn't have that issue that day, that they're makbar on it like the Mordechai, but they don't go every day.
But he has no idea what it was. He didn't know they didn't go to the mikveh. But if he says, not also Mordechai, he says, I have my shachtim, I tell them they must go to the mikveh before they shecht. If that is your standard that you want, he has not complied with your standard. So you don't use that shechitah.
Okay, so go back to your let's go back to your. So we said you have glatt, then you had the non-glatt, then you were talking about Chassidisher Shechitah. So
okay, so then they started this thing Chassidisher Shechitah. So it's not where they stem from, because there are others that wanted to shecht by the so-called Chassidisher Shechitah, like a Sephardi, and they tell him, you're not the Chassidisher. He says, what do I have to do to be a Chassidish? They say, well, you have to wear Shabbos HaShtreimel and wear the begodim, and we could accept you, and they accepted him. That means it doesn't make a difference from where he stems from. So what is the Chassidisher Shechitah? So everything that I've checked out with them, the only thing I was able to determine Chassidisher Shechitah was that years ago there was two ways of selling sakinam. One is tzad echad and one is shnei tzadim. So Shechitah, the Litvish used to do tzad echad, and the Chassidisher did shnei tzadim. So now all these Shechitas have shnei tzadim. So basically we could call them all Chassidisher Shechitah.
Rabbi Shain, is a Chassidisher Shechitah more expensive than a non-Chassidisher Shechitah?
Well, what they did was they limited you by which shachtim are going to be used, and they used this thing of Chassidisher Shechitah to take control of the market. Just like the Hamachshir wanted to take control of the kosher markets, they made a thing everybody has to use Hamish. Are they better than the other ones? Absolutely not. Is the Chassidisher Shechitah better than what we have a Litvish Shochet that we had all the years that checked by Broya or by any other places? Absolutely not. And forget, there's a lot of Mislamdim by the Chassidisher Shechitas, which is a lot of people don't want Mislamdim. The Litvish ones had people that were tremendous Talmidei Chachamim.
What do you mean Mislamdim?
Mislam means that they're students, they're learning. Another guy, you could see right away how he's shechting that he's not an old-timer over here. And, you want to learn Shechitah, go learn someplace else. But when you're shechting over here, for me, for the tzibur, this and that, you have to be an experienced shochet that has a lot of Shechitah under your belt. Not that you're fresh out of the thing, because basically there's always problems that happen by a new shochet.
Okay, so you have the Chassidisher Shechitah. So you say they took control of the market. Is it more expensive or is it the same price?
It's definitely more expensive. It's yet more. What it is like this. Let's say you have in certain areas of Chassidisher Olam they want to have, which we know they want flanken. When the purveyors are selling to those areas flanken, it's $1 a pound more because this is what you want. So wherever they short, if you would take that same so-called Chassidisher Shechitah, you sell it in a store in the Midwest, you get it a lot cheaper than buying it in the metropolitan New York area. Because they know over here they could get the price out of the public a much higher price than they could get over there. Because over there the fellow says, I don't need this kind of shechita. I could take anything. There's other OU shechitas around. Why do I have to pay for the so-called Chassidisher shechita? And they wouldn't pay for it, and because of that, the price is lower in those places. So there was a butcher that bought all his meat from the Midwest, and he had it shipped out to New York over here until they caught him, and they stopped this thing over here because they want to get these higher prices from them. But calling Chassidisher Shechitah has definitely raised the prices tremendously on Shechitah. Besides the fact that we really could have had the non-glatt, which will bring down the cost and the volume tremendously.
So is the OU then cheaper than Chassidisher Shechitah?
Yes.
Okay, so now you're walking me through a grocery, and I have a shopping cart I'm buying for Shabbos. What would you tell me? Say, you want to be makbid, eat this. Give me some guidance. Well,
you like this in Bederach Kal the Shechitas in veal, which is basically up to 12 months, or in sheep or lamb. These type of things. Basically, what they're taking is completely glatt. It means the slightest sircha there is on any animal that's veal that's under 12 months, they don't accept that as kosher shechita. Maybe it'll be sold as non-glatt, but in the glatt it doesn't come. So really, anybody who really wants to be makbid, let's call it, that they want to go Bais Yosef and they're eating veal, so technically if they would take veal, that's what they're really getting. But are the Chassidisher places really giving what should be called Bais Yosef is a good question, because the question is now, how do we determine what is Bais Yosef? So we have a few different criteria. Some is called shayish, which is marble, completely smooth. There is absolutely nothing on there. Others will call what we call sticky paper. As you have these sticky notes, when you pull it off, it doesn't take anything from where it's stuck onto, but you could remove it. So they feel that if they take off a sircha and it comes off that easily, they could still call it Bais Yosef. Others say, no, I want to have that it's got to be smooth as shayish.
So who's Machshir and who's Mekel?
Okay, let's take this from Erzstroll, what's his name, Rav Machbud. Let's take Rav Machbud. He says, and he spoke to me and another Svardsher Rav on the telephone, that anything that's not shayish, which is smooth as marble, he considers it to be treif. So I told him, you give an ashgacha on a Shechitah in South America, and what percentage are you getting over there of shayish? And he tells me he's getting 40%. I said, how old is the cattle? He says he doesn't know. I said, well, I know that it's about 30 to 40 months old. You will never get 30 to 40 months old, 40% shayish. It doesn't exist in the world. I said, how many teeth does the animal have? He says he doesn't know. I said, do you know you could tell by the teeth and the shape of the teeth how old the animal is approximately within a couple of months? He didn't know. He says, but when he comes down there, he sees that it's 15%, that it's 40%. I said, do they know when you're coming down? He says no. So I ask him, who picks you up from the airport? He says, one of the people from the plant. So I said, evidently they knew. I said, do you know that when you come down there, they're bringing in animals that are 15 months old. 15 months old, you're going to find 40% in South America, but you're not going to find it on 30 to 40 months old. He was unaware of that. So I said, according to your standard, your behemoth that's going on, your stempel, that it's Bais Yosef Glatt is really treif.
Wow.
And he's unaware, and he says, I'm living in Erzstroll, I'm relying on the Tzevet. Okay, you're relying on the Tzevet, but Lamaisa, that's what it is. You're going here. You have now others in South America.
Rabbi Shain, let's just be clear for our olam that even though it's treif for the Sardim, the Ashkenazim would be kosher because we're not.
100% correct. That's right. We for us even non-Glatt would be kosher.
Right.
Yeah, like everything the Rabbanot is taking basically is usually non-Glatt. I mean, it's not non-Glatt. They call it Glatt, but basically it's not the standard that we're looking for. They'll go in like the Rabbanot goes together with a lot of these other Shechitahs, the Eidah, Sheris, Rabbi Reuben, Rav Lando, this, that, and they have their Tzevet over there, their group, and they have the other ones. Whatever you're rejecting, you're not taking, they'll review and check the lungs and the other parts of the animal if it's acceptable to them. And they accept it. But they also call it Glatt. So, but they do get a certain percentage, another 15-20% of what your standard of a higher Glatt standard is not what they're taking, and that's what they're supplying to others, which we could really do this all over here in America.
So Rabbi Shain, let's start with Bais Yosef. Who is the highest standard of Bais Yosef, and who would you say is the second?
So the question is, what are we really calling Bais Yosef? If we're going to call Bais Yosef that there's a thing called Kari Achbush. Kari Achbush is like a very, very fine little mesh that's laying on top of the thing. If you really move it around, you'll usually get it off without any problems. Others are considering that to be Bais Yosef. Others say no, even Kari Achbush they don't want to accept. They want to have shayish. Let's take one shechitah. Let's call Solomon's. I was there last year for 3 days. Nothing at all that's on there, whether it's Kari Achbush or anything else, will they accept as being Bais Yosef. It has to be smooth as could be.
So how old are the behemoths then? The
behemoths over there are about 30 to 36 months. But they're only getting 12%, 10 to 12% of Bais Yosef.
So what
they're not getting no 40%.
So they do the first 12% of Bais Yosef, and the next percent they'll sell as Glatt.
As Glatt, but not Bais Yosef.
But for Ashkenazim.
Yes.
Okay, so is Solomon then in your eye sort of like the highest standard of Bais Yosef?
In my house, basically, I've been using Solomon's, I'd say, for the last most probably 4 years. There are other shechitahs that I would use, but that's only if I can't get all the Solomon's, because I felt from what I've inspected and seen and heard from Shochet and Boitkim and everything that Solomon's is basically on the highest madrega that there is. There is also now another one, which I wasn't down there yet, but I've heard from Shochet that there is Birdsboro started doing meat about a year and a half ago. That Shechitah is in Uruguay, and from the Shochet, what I hear that the standard that there is by Solomon's is the same standard they're using over there.
So, Rabbi Shain, what's unfortunate to the consumer is we have probably 10 or 20 different, hashgachas, and like we need a consumer's reports where somebody could say, this glot is better than this glot, this Bais Yosef is better than that Bais Yosef, because there doesn't seem to be any way to measure, certainly for the layman, no way to measure one against the other as far as kashrus.
So let me clarify one point. There used to be in South America where you get a higher ratio of Bais Yosef than over here in the United States because they're more out in the fields, etc. They're raised differently. There is a higher percentage of Bais Yosef, it's true. So what others have done now in South America, they decided we were getting till now some, whatever it is, 30%, 35% of Bais Yosef, and we were getting 15, 20% of non-Bais Yosef. Let's eliminate the non-Bais Yosef, and let's drop down a little bit the standard of Bais Yosef, and they're up to now with Bais Yosef 45%, and they don't take anything else, they're only taking Bais Yosef, and anything coming out of South America by them became Bais Yosef. And that they started about 2 years ago. So you go to a lot of stores in Queens where there's a lot of Sfardim or these type of areas, you're going to see a lot of meat coming from South America, from certain purveyors. Everything is Bais Yosef. But it's really impossible. So when I'm doing an affair for others, whether I'm doing a wedding or a mitzvah, whatever else it is, I don't consider that, or I do a hotel for Pesach, I don't take any of that meat and count it as Bais Yosef because I feel that standard is completely unjustified.
I understand. So let me take you back to our virtual supermarket. So we're walking through it. So the highest standard, I guess, is the Bais Yosef because they don't take any sircha. And after that, you go to the non-Bais Yosef shechitah. So
no, but over here, we're going to separate another issue, another item like this. There is also asik with nicker. Anything past the 10th rib, usually you have more problems with nicker. So like Solomon's has another brand they call Fischl's. Fischl's, everything is always Bais Yosef. Plus, they don't take anything past the 10th rib, and they don't take hangers, and they don't take skirts. Those things are very hard to be menaker, the hanger and the skirts, and anything past the 10th rib. So if somebody wants to take that he has, that his nicker is done 100%, 110%, and he has the Bais Yosef, then he would buy Fischl's. But that is the only one around that I know of that has these type of standards because of the nicker and that it's a Bais Yosef, that if people want to be makbah completely and be makbah on the nicker, they would take the Fischl's meat.
So who is Solomon's? It seems like a real Yerei Shamayim owns it. Who is Solomon?
Solomon's is under the square hashgacha. It belongs to, I forgot the person's name. The one that's running it is somebody, Fischl Ziegelheim, that lives in Lakewood.
Uh-huh.
But they really run, you see, there's also a very interesting thing that comes up by most shechitahs. And what happens is like this. If you blow up a lung more than there's no reason to blow up a lung more than what it is in the behemoth when it's alive.
And they do blow up every lung, don't they?
Yeah, but they blow up the lungs over there. They blow up everything by sheep and by sheep and lamb. Basically, they very often in a lot of shechitahs they don't blow up any lungs. They do a b'dikas pnim, and that's when they decide if it's acceptable or it's not acceptable. But by behemoth,
which is a b'diavad a b'dikas pnim, right?
You need a b'dikas pnim and a b'dikas chutz. But if they find that everything is clean over there, they don't buy. They'll do just b'dikas chutz without blowing up the lung.
Right.
And that they got basically. I think that they said that the Satmarov said not to blow up the lungs by sheep, because when you start blowing up the lungs, he was afraid they're going to play around with it and try to take off things that really shouldn't be taken off. And because it's young, it'll come off. So he decided not to. But what happens is when you blow up a lung more than it was at the time of when it was alive, and usually you could tell the lung changes color a little bit. What happens is there's very small capillaries in the lung that'll start bleeding very, very slightly. Some will accept that and just leave it and say it's not a problem. In Solomon's, they don't take any of those lungs that were blown up, and you could see afterwards very, very small little specks of blood starting to come out. They rejected the lung not only as non-Bais Yosef, they rejected it as non-kosher as far as they're concerned, which I told them that you're causing a lot of hezek damage to the owners over here of the Shechitah, because if you wouldn't blow up the lung more than what you would have to, you would be able to accept another couple of percent. But, it's very interesting. The ones that say they want to have Chassidisher Shochet, they never say anything about the Boidkim.
Right.
And a Boidik Pnim, you need a much, much bigger Yiras Shamayim than a Shochet, because you don't know what in the world he's doing when his hand is in there. He could remove certain sirches. He could detach it from the rib cage. He could detach it from a umaloma. He could do many, many different things that you have no idea what in the world is doing, and the Boidik Chutz is not necessarily going to pick up on that there was a problem. So that's the one that you really have to have the biggest Yiras Shamayim is the Boidik Pnim. But that they would accept, others that are not so-called Chassidisher Shechitah.
So, Rabbi Chaim, let's continue. So you're saying first you have Bais Yosef, you say Solomon's is the good Bais Yosef. Now you buy the non-Bais Yosef, Chassidisher, Litvish Shechitah. Is there one that you say is better than the next? How would you rate them?
Okay, so let's go like this. The best you have is Solomon's and Birdsboro that comes from Uruguay.
Who is that? Which under which
Solomon's is under the Hashgacha of Hisachtas.
Right, and Birdsboro?
Birdsboro is on the Hisachtas, and Solomon's is on the Square.
Okay, and then what do you have?
Then you have Ali. Ali Mealmart is under the Nirbata.
Okay.
So what he has as so-called Bais Yosef or whatever else it is from South America, I don't accept that as Bais Yosef. I would say it's basically regular glot, not any Bais Yosef, but they're selling it very big as Bais Yosef. What else do you have there? Then you have like this, the other ones from Agri and Aaron I don't use at all.
Because why?
And because basically there's a lot of issues over there with the Shochem and the Boitkim, et cetera. They're under a lot of pressure. They don't let them, they're not allowed to talk to anybody on the outside, which they do sometimes, but they get fired and they have a $5,000 penalty if they're found that they spoke.
Okay, and what about, where does OU fit in this picture?
The OU has certain, which I'm not. I know the OU like on the Birdsboro, on the chicken Shechitah, on the meat Shechitah, the OU is on it. Solomon's and Fischel's, the OU is on it. Ali and Mealmart, the OU is on it. Agri, Askan, that the OU is on many of them, but I know there is some of them that are also under the OU, which does not have any of these other ones, like I think something Lo and Behold or something, and a few other ones. I'm not sure of the other ones because I've never really delved into those, because that's not the ones that are negaya much to me. And then again, and also Lamashal and the Star Case Shechitahs I wouldn't use either.
Because
they found that there's a lot of shtick that's done over there I don't know if it's exactly only in the B'dikas Pnim that there's shtick, but there's a lot of things that are going on which I've picked up from a lot of Shochet and Boitkim, and they basically stay away from their things.
Now, I know, let's say, a lot of the people from the OU, Rabbi Nachum Genak, etc., and I find them to be just stellar, very straightforward. I mean,
correct.
These are people you would lend money to on a handshake, and you get it back like a minute to the minute. Just very, extremely honest, just no shtick people.
I find that to be the same thing.
And so, how would you compare where they give a hechsher to, let's say, some of the others that are out there?
Well, basically, it's like this. From the OU, I would call up. I would want to find out something. Basically, they'll give me a very straight answer. I'll know exactly what's going on. We very often trade information because there's other information that they don't have access to that I do have access to. But I found them to be very, very straight. Maybe a lot of people will not accept certain ones of their standards, what they have, but they have on everything. They have a written psak on it.
Let me ask you a general question because we're going to run out of time. Would you say, in general, Hashgacha in America has improved a lot? Is it better? Is it worse? Is it getting better? How would you How would you quantify? Just as somebody who's like an international consultant like kashrus, is kashrus
okay? So let's take it like this. There was a few years ago, 12 years ago, Reb Shmuel Birnbaum and Reb Aaron Shechitah, among other yeshivas, were trying to bring out and have items made that yeshiva like could use. So they approached the OU and others that what could yeshiva like use, and the OU says, as far as we're concerned, they could use everything. So he says, but we want to have something with a higher grade. We want a mahadran thing. So he says, go to the Hamish Ashgochas. They're providing that. We're providing to the general public. We're not addressing for these things if you have certain hidurim that you want. And basically, they really didn't get any place. But what happened is, when the Hamish Ashgochas came into play, whatever it is, 15, 20 years ago, this is what they should have done, but on the end, what happened was, let me tell it to go like this. Rev Breuer, when he set up the kashrus 60, 70 years ago, he got up on the bimmer and he said, I'm going to set up a hashgacha that will have no chumras and no hidurim. Just basic kashrus. People were stunned by it. So he says, let me explain. When we start off that we want to have chumras and hidurim, we might be left with possibly chumras and hidurim, but we're not going to have basic kashrus. I want basic kashrus. The Hamish Ashgochas have so-called, we thought they're going to come in and make chumras and hidurim and have basic kashrus, but it turned out on the end, you're looking for basic kashrus, stick to the OU. You're looking for chumras and hidurim and no basic kashrus, go to the Hamish Ashgochas. So, could we say it went up or it went down? Well, as far as the OU is concerned, what I see is they've gone up tremendously. You take most of the items, I say 60, 70% of the items, I'm not talking about the dairy or the meat, 60, 70% of their items is basically acceptable for yeshivalite. You go to the Hamish ones, there's a lot of weaknesses. They don't have trained people. They don't have this. They don't have that. You got a problem. But the people, I'm get at that Hamish, I want Hamish, but you're not getting basic kashrus. You got a big problem. So in the Hamish area, kashrus has fallen. It became basically out for the buck. In the OU, it has gone up tremendously.
Let me ask you one last question. How come Tsar Balachayim is not an issue in Shechitah?
I'm going to address now the very interesting thing with Tsar Balachayim you're bringing out. There's certain Shechitahs, like in Kiryas Yoel, they insist that the Shochet takes out the feathers by the neck, by the chicken.
Yeah.
The night is the feathers.
Which is a machlekes of Tsar Balachayim.
Yes, okay, no, Yehuda, etc. So what I've watched is, by the number of the shachtim there, they'll take out every fifth chicken, they'll take out the feathers, and when he's shechting, he's not shechting in the mokum of the feathers. So I went to the Untitled Chapter and I said, Gaval Geschnigen. First of all, if you say that the feathers have to be taken out, they have to take it out by every one of them. Now, if the fact that they didn't, and he's taking out and he's shechting not the mokum we took it out, so he was just over the rice of Tsar Balachayim, and he's shechting. I say, either you shechten the place, so there's a heter of Tsar Balachayim, that it's not Tsar Balachayim because you needed it for the Shechitah, but if you're not shechting where you took out the feathers, you only went through the motion, you were over the Reisa, and now you're shechting. I say, who wants to have such a Shechitah to shecht?
What about Tsar Balachayim with, the way they treat the animals before Shechitah, they're terrorized? Do you believe? Do you think that's an issue?
I've gone through with a lot of them, and I've had a lot of discussions with Temple Graden about it. There are certain things that can be done, and even I was in South America, which they do it with a chain, they tie it down, this and that. It's 95% they don't have these kind of issues of the way they put it, PETA and everything else like it, isn't there? Because I've been in these Shechitahs many, many times, and this what they're calling the Tsar Balachayim, really, occasionally you'll have them all, but there are certain places which I've seen pictures that it is, even that's a stroll, the way they were treating the chickens and other kind of things. Yes, there is a lot of Tsar Balachayim by a lot of these things, and the question is how to deal with it. I don't know how to deal with it. But most of the Shechitahs that we have, say in America, even a number of the better ones in South America, you don't have a problem with Tsar Balachayim.
Rabbi Shain, thank you very much for your time. We greatly appreciate it.
Kol tov.
Take care. Bye-bye. We have on the phone with us from Lakewood, New Jersey, Rabbi Baruch Mordechai Spiegal, who's the Rav of Tiferes Pinchas. He's also been a Shochet for many decades. He's an expert in Shechitah. Welcome, Rabbi Spiegal.
Shalom Aleichem, Reb David. How are you?
Baruch Hashem.
I'm speaking to you.
Rabbi Spiegal, could you explain to our Olam, most of whom probably do not know that much about what goes on in Shechitah, Shlachtayze, etc., the difference between a Chassidisher Shechitah, when you see it on the label, between a non-Chassidisher Shechitah, between when you see something that's a hashgacha of Bais Yosef on the meat. Tell it for as an expert in this, explain it to us.
Right. So the thing is like this: years ago in America, when the Eden started coming over after the Second World War, there was a balabatim who ran the industry of the Shechitah, and these balabatim used to work and make the people work on Yom Tovim and all the getaways, and even on Purim and all these hard times until the Satmarov came along and he saw that there's a big need that the oil won't eat from this Shechitah, which a lot of Eden didn't eat meat in America as well. Because in Europe, how it was is the Shochet in the little shtetl would check one cow and that would be enough for the whole shtetl for the whole year. But since it started becoming more of so much more meat had to be produced than in the Shlachtayze, so there had to be more control over here in America. So Satmarov wanted to establish a certain standard in the Shechitah. So Mamele, he said he didn't want to fight with them. So he said that our chumras are that we should have sheikhim who their wives don't drive any cars and they're makbid on not to have. They go to the mikveh and they have beards. So like this, he knocked away a lot of people who were in the industry then who weren't fry and they weren't such Hamish people. So like this, he had only Hamish people shechting. But there's no such thing in halacha-wise. There was no such thing as Chassidish Shechitah. There really is no such thing. It was just that Chassidim came along and they put themselves into it, just like Chassidim made Bikkur Cholim and they made Tancha Shabbos and they made RCCS and they made Boni Olam, and Chassidim go out and do it. But the Tzedem Rav made kosher Chol Yisrael milk. In the Litvish world, nobody came about and put themselves into it. The Litvish world, the Deren and all the Gedolim came and they built yeshivas. So the Chassidim built kashrus and the Litvish built Torah. So really, there was a thing really in Shechitah, saying this Chassidisher Shechitah. The Chassidim went into the industry to make Shlachtayze. If the Litvish world maybe would open up, maybe they would eat that also, but they don't have it. They didn't produce it. So really, there's no really thing in Shulchan Aruch, there's no such thing as Chassidisher Shechitah. But there is such a thing in Shulchan Aruch that a Shochet should be a Yir Shamayim, a Shochet should have a beard. If a Shochet goes to the mikveh, it's more Yir Shamayim. So that's like a big plus. Somebody wants such type of Shechitah because also we know that Shechitah is something that if it's tamei, it's everything what the Shochet thinks goes into the meat, which is brought down in Svarim. So maybe they want it choshev people. Now, the fact is that in the Shechitah world, we know there's a company called Rosenblatt who had yeshiva-lites in the last couple of years. The CRT from Chicago, they opened up in Torah, Shechitah. It was a gorgeous Shechitah. It was one of the nicest Shechitahs around in that kosher light. Somebody called it Avi Bloch, and he did Yohayon, kosher yeshiva-light, which was a gorgeous Shechitah, and everybody who just knew about it ate from it, because there's no chilik from the Chassidisher Shechitah to the Litvish Shechitah, but there's no such thing as a Litvish Shechitah. So when it was called Chassidisher Shechitah, people knew that automatically that the people who were involved were Elachid and they ought to trust them. That's basically what Chassidisher Shechitah means.
Now, you Rabbi Spiegal, you work for the OU as well. The OU is not Chassidisher Shechitah, I imagine. So where do they get their sheikhtim from?
The OU uses Chassidisher sheikhtim also. The OU doesn't have any plant who they own. The OU doesn't own a plant. The OU goes into gives hashgacha on Ali, on Milmat, they give hashgacha on bells, they give hashgacha on all this meat that's produced. It has an OU too. So really, the OU themselves don't have sheikhtim that is called an OU sheikhet. There are plants in America or who used to have no hashgacha, only an OU, and they used whichever sheikhet came about, and they certified him in the OU that he was a good sheikhet. Had nothing to do with the OU didn't put out a thing that you have to go to the mikveh, but for Shtetzach, a sheikhet, they wanted a sheikhet with a beard, everybody wants the same standard. Nobody wants less standard. Today in the Shechitah world, we want the best, and everybody wants the best extra. It means that Shechitah is something that you're eating kosher meat. Somebody wants the best meat. So the Mela, the OU also has their standards, and their standards are very high too. It doesn't has nothing to do in OU, a Litvish or Chassidisher Shechitah. There is enough gemina that a Chassidisher Yid won't eat from somebody who trims his beard, or who doesn't go to the mikveh. Chassidim are more machmer, so they won't eat from such a Shechitah. But not in halacha, there's no problem with it as well.
So Rabbi Spiegal, the Chassidim that are makbid, let's say, going to the mikveh, are they makbid like the Bais Yosef says that the Sheikhtim, this is in Siman Aleph, should be bekiyim b'chaftal at Sifrei HaKodesh?
Nobody's makbid on that.
Are they should be baki in the Shivim Treifis? Are they makbid on that?
The Shivim Treifis, that's something else. The Sheikh doesn't have to know the Treifis. If he's a poetic, he has to know the Treifis. So it has nothing to do with that, really. It's a separate shiloh. Well, but the Shochet has to have Kabbalah on Shechitah, and if he went to a legitimate Rav, and the Rav gave him Kabbalah, he's an accepted Shochet in the OU. In the OU also, the Shochet doesn't know the treifis. Whatever, probably if he learns the Shulchan Aruch, then he knows all the treifis. Because whoever had him on it, from the Chassidisher and on Bais David, should have had him on that also, and if it's in Siman Aleph, then he has to know it to get a Kabbalah on Shechitah. You can't get a Kabbalah on Shechitah without knowing the Shulchan Aruch. The Chassidim say you want Untitled Chapter, the Litvish say more Shulchan Aruch. And basically, if somebody has a Kabbalah, then he had to know all the halacha. In fact, I just had a Chassidisher Imam last week over here in Beit Gavoya. I got Kabbalah on Shechitah. The guy knew every shach and thousand from Garden, backwards and forwards, the whole of the Shechitah and the Treifis with the Lashon. So you can't, it's not a right statement to say.
So what about other Chassidisher, let's say Shechitah is makbid on not to use veal like Ramosha's Chumrah?
There's Ali sells veal.
Is Ali a Chassidisher Shechitah?
Yes. Yeah, about the roof, it's not for the Shechitah, they sell veal, yeah.
And they're not worried that Ramosha says Bali Nefesh Ein Lu Lechel Klal.
Okay, that has nothing to do with the companies who shech. That's every person on their own. It's about whoever's a Bali Nefesh should be machma on that. Actually, you know what I mean. Ramosha wrote his tshuva, and Ramosha holds chayish on veal for the 80 treifis. I used to shech veal a lot. It's a real. Me personally, I couldn't eat veal because you saw how big the treifis was. But veal is an American product. It wasn't in that children don't have veal b'chlal. But here in America, they shechted young calves. It depends which calf, which veal.
Are they
the red veal, the white veal?
Do they do bedikis on Tzaimis Hagidin in the Chassidisher Shechitah?
Tzaimis Hagidin is only on chickens, not on behemoths.
I'm talking about on chickens.
Oh, so now you're going to chickens?
Yeah.
They do. Yeah, sure. Every plant does today.
On every eif they do, or do they just do a sampling?
Every eif.
Really?
Every eif is checked today, and it's a mandatory. It's OU, Chassidisher, Shechitah. Everybody's under the same standard today. There's too much gishim checking every single chicken that goes by. They check the tumor they get.
Now let me ask you. Say that they're makbid, let's say in a Chassidisher Shechitah, that they should go to the mikveh, or let's say shave the beard. They shouldn't trim their beard. Are they makbid? Let's say that they should be kaveya eat them l'toyra every day.
Vada. They make sure. First of all, I'll give you an example. I was just now in a plant in Kosher Mahadran. They make sure that it bells. Actually, They make sure that there's 2 dayanim by every Shechitah, and the dayanim give shurim in the morning, by night, the dafyoimi, and whatever they're learning, the sheikhim have to come along and they have shurim. These are el chiyidin. We're talking about the Yidden who are going away and they're learning. Sure.
Could you tell us the difference between Bais Yosef and non-Bais Yosef? Yeah,
Bais Yosef and non-Bais Yosef has to do with the bedikas harei, not with the Shechitah. Now, the Bais Yosef is that the Ramon and the Bais Yosef have an argument of what's called a sircha, how many sirchas to take off. The Bais Yosef holds one Shechitah, which goes with the Rashba, and the Ramon is Mekel, and the Svardim hold like the Bais Yosef across the board. So Mamela, they need to have Shechitahs Bais Yosef because they pass them like the Bais Yosef. We Ashkenazim go with the Ramah. So Mamela, we don't have to be machbid on the Bais Yosef Shechitah. So that's the nafkamina. When it says Bais Yosef, or it says not, it's talking for Svardish people. People who are Svardim, they only eat Bet Yosef because they are makbid on the Maran. So they can only eat what the Bais Yosef says. It has nothing to do with anything else. Like is the Ramon of Bais Yosef, and people who are Svardim, makbid on Bais Yosef, eat Bais Yosef. Now, Bais Yosef today became today, when we call Bais Yosef means that we're talking about that the Rei is chalik and they don't take off any rielach and they can, it's chalak. So people who want to have, it should be shayish, they want to have a Rei what's very clean, will go if they want to have a Bais Yosef stamp on it because it's less tampered with and it's more you have more hedurim in it. But not because we are makbid on the Bais Yosef.
So they're makbid more on sirches and sirches atluyas, etc.
Whatever the Bais Yosef Shechitah is, it's not for now. Whatever the Shechitah of Bais Yosef is, they're makbid on that.
Okay. Now, can you tell the Olam what's the difference between glat and not glat?
Not glat means that the glat means there's no sirches on it. And non-glat means you have a lot of sirches. You have sirches. Something that has a sirche is not glat. Something that has real is called glat, but it's not Bais Yosef.
Is there a Shechitah in America that you think is a particularly good Shechitah? You would say this is the one they have the most chumris. It's the slowest Shechitah. The makbid, they don't do that many. They do more bedikas hasakin. The makbid more. They do maybe bedikas on the ifis as well. Is there a particular Shechitah that you would say they are a different standard?
I'll answer your question very simple. Any Shechitah that's run by a kehillah, was run by an organization, is always better than a Shechitah that's a private label. That means a Shechitah that has an organization or has a kehillah has no problem of spending as much money as they need for all the chumras, whatever they need. But a Shechitah that's run privately and the development without making money, so then it's going to be less chumradik and less better than a Shechitah. For example, I'm just giving you an example. Let's take Satmar, right? It's a kehillah. The kehillah has no problem. Whatever you need to spend, they'll spend. The kehillah, it's not owned privately. But something that's owned privately, then everything is nitty-gritty with the money. So then I'll have a harder time getting what you want to get than a Shechitah that's more of a kehillah Shechitah.
So could you name for us, because most of us are ignorant, like what are the few largest kehillah Shechitahs and what are the few largest non-kehillah Shechitahs?
Yeah, I'm giving you a most. You have London, Gaddafi, Square, Satmar, you have Bells, Bubba. I'm just giving you a muscle. You have names. You have a name. You have somebody who's a kehillah. Then you know that you have more of you're doing a lot better than a private Shechitah.
And give us an example of a private Shechitah.
Private Shechitahs? There are a lot of private Shechitahs. Offhand, I don't remember.
Okay, I mean, would you consider the OU a private Shechitah?
The OU is not private, no. The OU is an organization.
So would that be more daima to a kehillah? Would you say?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when people say Meal Mart or Alley or Abashkin, would those be private Shechitahs?
I would imagine.
You would imagine. Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to educate us with?
No, basically this is, people make assumptions on things that they don't know. People should ask their rabbanim, their rav, or if there are people who know about it when they have questions. And the main thing is that we really have to, people should know when they go into a store what they're looking at, what they're buying, and not be fooled by things that politics and all these things.
So, Rabbi Spiegal, let me ask you. We'll end up with a question which you could or could not answer. But would you say that OU is as good as any Shechitah in America?
100%.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Spiegal.
Very good. You speak about it.
Bye-bye.
We have on the phone with us from Mexico City, Mexico, a very well-known Shochet, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok Deren. Welcome, Rabbi Deren.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for having me on.
So, Rabbi Deren, we are lay people. We don't know much about the history of Shechitah in America, the politics, etc. Could you explain to us the difference between a Chassidisher Shechitah, a non-Chassidisher Shechitah, Chabad Shechitah, etc.? Give us the general parameters.
Okay, so I'll do the best that I can. First of all, just so people don't get any misunderstanding, I'm not actually from Mexico City. I just happen to be in Mexico, not in Mexico City at the moment. I'm from Pittsburgh, but as most shochet nowadays, we travel a lot in order to do Shechitah in various places. But as far as your question, so I think the best way that I would like to address it is there are Shechitahs today that are referred to by a specific designation. You say Chassidisher Shechitah, that's a very general designation, but more specifically, you'll find, say, Lubavitch Shechitah. I'm personally a Lubavitch Chassid. Although I just want to make sure that I'm not speaking on behalf of Lubavitch and I'm not speaking on behalf of Lubavitch Shechitah, but I just used it as an example. And then, of course, you have many others. You have, say, a Belzer Shechitah, or, for example, you may have KAJ Shechitah, which would be Kahala Dasi Shurim. So where do these Shechitahs get these designations? So I think the way to understand that is by understanding, first of all, how any Hamachshir works nowadays. We don't have a universal authority similar to the way it was in the times of the Bais Yosef, and we had the Sanhedrin, and there was one central authority of halacha. Ever since the Churban, things became very localized, and each community had its Beis Din, it had its Rabbanim, and they would be primarily paskening and overseeing different things for their particular communities. And that is pretty much the situation today. So if you have a Shechitah that's designated by a certain chog, a movement, the Chassidus, what it means is that the Beis Din that represents that particular kehillah and the Rabbanim of that particular kehillah are overseeing that Shechitah, and they are giving, their Hamachshir and, for their kehillah. And hence it then acquires that name, that designation.
So what is a Chassidisher, when you see on the label, Chassidisher Shechitah, what does it mean?
Okay. What I think it means is that probably we have to go back a little bit of the history of Shechitah in America. I think that the situation in the early 1900s, probably up until post-World War II, the matzav of Shechitah, to some degree, was very schwach, was very weak. I'm saying this not from first-hand knowledge, of course, just from things that I've read. There's the famous Rav, I think he was considered the chief rabbi of New York. I don't recall his name right now, but this was something that he fought for.
Rabbi
Yes. So I read recently a book that was written about his life and the mekomos that he waged in order to raise and to upgrade the matzah of Shechitah. What happened after World War II, when there was this major influx of the Chassidisher Olam settling in America, so apparently they were not happy with the situation, and they began to arrange Shechitahs that they were personally overseeing and endorsing. And I think that this was an effort that was primarily from the Chassidisher different kehillos, and I think hence this is where the term Chassidisher Shechitah came. So only because it happened to be that it was the Chassidim who had come to America, who saw the situation, and they put in the effort to improve the situation, which is probably where this idea of Chassidisher Shechitah is coming from. The Litvish apparently.
What does it mean today? So what does it mean today? Just give us a practical. What does it mean? When you're buying Chassidisher Shechitah, what does it mean? It says on the label.
So in my opinion, I mean, I cannot speak for the people who are actually using the term and putting it on their labels, but in my opinion, as somebody who's in this field, so I probably have some kind of an idea. So I would say it means that this is a shechita that is endorsed and, run by a bezdin and a rabbanim who are representing a Chassidisher kehillah. And it's also,
are there any halachic? So in other words, you could have a Litvish fellow like Rabbi Nachum Genak. He wears a short jacket. He has a trimmed beard, right? You could have the Lakewood bezdin, and then you have somebody who comes from Poland, Hungary, Oberland. He wears a long coat and a gartel. So there's a difference who the rabbanim are. Is that the only difference? Are there any halachic differences?
Okay, so as far as halachic difference, I don't think that there are any fundamental, real halachic differences. But going back to the original question, I think that those shchitas that would designate themselves as Chassidisher shchitas, they may be makbid, they may be very particular about hiring only shachtim who consider themselves to be followers of the Derech of Chassidus.
So, for example, so let me ask you a question. You say you're a Chabad Shochet, and I know you've shechted for many. Like you say, today, unfortunately, Shechtim have to travel around a lot. They rarely have one job. So you say you've shechted for Reb David Miller and for the Star K and for the Magen David and obviously for Chabad. Have you ever, let's say, shechted for, I don't know, Skver, for Visionitz, for Satma, for any of those Shechtim?
I have not.
And is that because you are not a Skver, you are not a Satma, you are not a Visionitz, or you are not a Belz? Is that why?
Possibly.
So I'm only basing. You said that the sheikhtim from these, let's say Belzer Shechitah, they use Belzer Chasidim. Is that what it means? If you buy Belzer Shechitah, it means that the sheikhtim go to the Belzer Rebbe, they go to the big still over there in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, they daven with the Belzer. Is that what it means?
Well, I don't think it would mean exactly that, because let's assume there is such a thing as a Belzer Shechitah, and perhaps their priority would be to use Belzer Shachtim, but I don't think that they would use exclusively Belzer Shachtim. But one of the things that probably is important would be someone who actually, dresses with Chassidisher Levush, etc., etc.
Okay, so let me ask you.
Unfortunately,
let me just ask you a few questions. The Shulchan Aruch says in Siman Aleph of Yeridea that a shochet should be a baki b'chaf daled sifrei HaKodesh, a Talmud b'kama prakim. Do Chassidisher shchitas makbid that they should have that they should be makbid in the chaf daled sifrei HaKodesh?
I don't know specifically that any shechita actually ever questions a shochet or gives like a.
So they have to be baki in the shivim treifis. By the Chassidisher shechita, they makbid at the baki in the shivim treifis.
I don't know about the shivim treifis, but they would certainly have to be baki in treifis areya.
Well, I understand that. Yeah, but that's already a kula. That's the kula of the Darkei Moshe. But the Bais Yosef says l'chumra they should be baki. The Chassidim makbid that the sheikhtim should be baki in the ayin treifis.
Okay, so again, I don't think I really don't want to. It shouldn't seem as if I'm speaking on behalf of all the Chassidisher.
No, I'm just your guess.
I don't think so. My guesstimate would be that no. I don't know. I've never heard that there is, as a prerequisite for a certain Hamachshir, that that the shachtim
so let me so the Darkei Tshuva
according to the Bais Yosef and not be seibich on the kula. No, I'm not aware of anything like that.
Are they makbid, for example? Let's say, I mean, do the Chassidisher shchitas give hechsher on, let's say, a veal?
You mean because of the issue that Rabbi Tendler brought up?
With the issue of Ramosha and the Gris Moshe and Ezer and like Dawotzim and Tzadik Beis,
where he says that Baal Nefesh should be marchik from eating veal. Are the Chassidisher is makbid not to give a hechsher on veal?
Not that I'm aware of.
Even though Rabbi says that it's that roiv of them are treifus and they need besides bedikas hareya
I'm aware.
Are they makbid on bedikas b'nei ma'ayim? I just before we go into the politics, I want to establish whether it's a political issue, whether you're a member of a certain particular chassidus or tribe, or does it actually have a halachic basis? Is a chassidish shechitah give hechsher on, let's say, foie gras?
Okay, I hear your question. The best that I could answer would be that I don't really believe, and I may be wrong, but I don't really believe that there are any fundamental halachic differences between one shechita or another.
Okay, so let me ask you, if not halacha, let me ask you hashkafa. The number of the great Chassidisher Rebbes, and I can give you the list, say that a chassid, when a Shochet should be makbid to do it with great kavanah, to be mild in the tzaitzis of the animal, to from the Olam Hagashmi to the Olam. The Chassidim have these kabbalistic kavanahs when they come from that they learn the kisfei and how to be mild in the tzaitzis of the thing, the way let's say the Talmidim of the Magid, right? You should have. Did they do it? This is not halacha. This is hashkafa. The sheikhim who do that.
Okay, so again, I don't think that this would be a particular prerequisite. Although it may be an assumption that a Chassidisher shechita, for example, like we mentioned before, whether it be a Belzer shechita or a Sleder shechita, right? It could be that that's the assumption of the Rabbonim when they hire the Shoftim, and that the Chassidisher Shoftim is that they learn these Svarim and that they're familiar with these Kavanim. But
okay, so let me continue on that line. Let me continue on that line. Let's say so. The Darkei Tshuva brings that a Shochet should be a Talmud Chacham. It should be Baki and Halacha because he's Loy Amor, it's Chassid, and you can't have Kavanis if you're not Milei Kreisei B'Shas. Are they makbid that they should be Talmidei Chachamim so that they should be able to have the Kavanis of Dari during Shechitah? Do they prepare them before they do it or not?
It's a question that I don't think I really could answer. If anything, there would be maybe a general attitude that, the person that they're hiring should not be an Amoritz. But to say that somewhere in some, whatever, in the bylines of that particular hashkacha, I don't think so. It would be a general assumption that when you're hiring a sheikh, you assume that
So let me ask you another question. Do you find you've shechted from Chassidim, I assume for Litvish, it sounds like for Sfardisher too. Have you found that let's say the Litvish sheikhtim are bigger amaratzim than the Chassidisher sheikhtim?
No, not by any stretch of the imagination. No. For that matter, I would not even go as far as to say that they're lacking in Yiddishkeit Shamayim either. But So what is what is the difference then? You're saying the only difference is do you belong to that? So in your experience, is there a pricing difference, let's say, between a Chassidisher shechita and a non-Chassidisher shechita, or maybe you wouldn't know that? There may be, but again, the bottom line is, like you just mentioned before, and like I said at the very beginning, it's more about people who will buy a certain shechita because that's what they're familiar with. These are the Rabbonim that they're saying and they're relying on them, and basically, that's what a person just makes that choice because these are the people who I believe are looking out for my interest, and pretty much that's what it is.
And is there a difference between Chabad shechita and other Chassidisher shechitas?
Like I mentioned before, I don't think there's a fundamental difference when it comes to the actual technical halachas of shechita of any of the shechitas. For that matter,
what about Yerushalayim? What about Yerushalayim? Is there a difference in the Yerushalayim of the different shechitas?
So how do you measure Yerushalayim?
In other words, do they feher the sheichtim? Do they see if they have kaveh itim l'toira? Do they check that they're talmidei chachamim? Do they give them a feher? Is there some?
Yeah.
Are the sheichtim for Starkei or Chabad? Are the sheichtim for Starkei less Yirei Shamayim than, let's say, for Chabad or the OU or vice versa?
I would never say a thing like that. I would absolutely never say that. First of all, I mean, who are we to judge someone's Yirei Shamayim? So again,
is there any? So Rabbi Deren, is there any Shechitah that you would say here is a Shechitah that there is a fundamental difference, that they have the Rav Bransdorfer's chumris, the boidik, they don't use veal or they don't use the ririm, that they're more makbid on bedikas hareim, that they're makbid on tzaymis agidin. Do you know? Could you think of a Shechitah in America that if somebody doesn't want to go after cultural labels as to which particular kehillah, here are people that are more makbid, that they don't do 800 chickens an hour, they only do much less because they actually do bedikas of the gidin. Is there anybody like that?
There probably are some discrepancies between one Shechitah and another about some of the issues that you bring up, but I really don't think that they are fundamental differences. You could have a Shechitah, for example, that would insist that the sheikhet not shecht maybe more than 30 an hour, and maybe another would be fine having a sheikhet shecht 45 or 50 an hour. Okay? I don't think that's a fundamental difference. It may be, some chumrah, that they could perhaps feel that, they're doing it a little bit better than somebody else. But as far as apsak halacha, right? That's not apsak halacha. That's a technical thing. Is 30 an hour too much? Is 45 an hour too much? Back to Shechitah of Gassif, which is really more my forte. I don't know of any real fundamental difference between any Shechitah that I'm familiar with. I'm not familiar with all of the Shechitahs.
Do you do nefiches hareyas by all Gassif? Today,
absolutely, of course. Yeah,
that's
do.
Basic. And what do you do by sirches? What is accepted standard for sirches?
Okay, so now you're actually getting into a very interesting field over here. It's interesting, part of this whole situation. So sirches, of course, is Allah and Shulchan Aruch. The area that's misrach is a treifa, right? But then there's such something which is called a rear, which is not considered to be a sircha, right? And everybody accepts the rear. And the reason why everybody accepts the rear is because otherwise people you would have to just stop eating meat, because it's rare to find a behemoth with a reya that does not even have a rear. I mean, it exists, but it's not very common. But the real question comes up as to where are you going to draw a line between what you call the rear and what you call a sircha? Okay, so that's already getting a little bit more complicated. Now that could be an area in which you may find a difference between one shechitah and another shechitah.
Well, for example, except in veal, Rabbi Deren, in veal, I mean, they take they take every sircha, they turn it into a rear. I mean, a machmir would say no.
No. Okay, so again, I'm really not that familiar with what goes on with veal, but when it comes to veal, at least from what I know and what I did when I did shech veal is that, and the way I was taught is that by a veal you don't even take a rear. As a matter of fact, there's even a term called a kelben eglat. Kelben eglat means that they is absolutely 100% clean, not even a rear.
Rabbi Deren, what you're basically saying is that in your eyes that the shechitah in America is pretty much standard, and for the most part, the label you see from the good hechsherim, and when I say good hechsherim, it could be Kahal, it could be OU, it could be Satma, it could be Lubavitch, and the difference is more about which kehillah Bezdin is on it.
Primarily, that would be my opinion. Primarily, yes.
Rabbi Deren, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it greatly. Is there anything you want to add on to this?
No, I just hope that I answered your questions and I was as clear as I could be.
Thank you very much. Okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Sure. Rabbi Deren. Bye-bye. We have on the phone with us from Lakewood, New Jersey, Rav Aaron Baruch Epstein, who runs Epstein's Meat, the famous establishment. I think it was founded still when Rabbi Aaron was alive. Correct me if I'm wrong, or not much later than that. Wrong. Okay. Okay. In Lakewood, New Jersey, certainly when Reb Schnee was alive. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
For many decades, he took it over from his father. Was also a Gacha Shvi'id. Welcome, Rabbi Epstein.
Thank you very much.
So, Rabbi Epstein, we're doing a program on Chassidisher meat, on Bais Yosef meat, and on non-Chassidisher meat. Is there a pricing difference between the three categories?
The pricing between three categories, not really. I can't say that there is. For example, I'll give you an example, and I'll break it down to you the best of my ability. Empire kosher poultry is not a Chassidisher Shechitah. It's a Litvish Shechitah. It's under the KJ, and their chicken cutlets are a lot more money per pound than Kiryas chicken cutlets. But chicken legs in the Empire department is a lot. Chicken legs in Kiryas is higher than in Empire. Why? Because what happens is that it's supply and demand. In the Freie Welt, in the non-yeshiva Chassidisher world, chicken tops, chicken breast was the right thing to eat. Is something that they eat. Chicken legs is a new zach that we eat, that the yeshiva light, that everybody eats because it's a much cheaper part of the chicken. It weighs less, and it's supply and demand. So if you're going to go buy chicken legs in Empire, it's going to be much cheaper than if you buy it in Kiryas. But if you're going to buy, or Birdsboro, or Pella, or any Shechitah out there, Marvard, or however, but chicken breast, or cutlets as they call it, is more higher in the Empire industry because that's what they service the people who is more of a supply and demand.
So be it Bell's, Kiryas Yoel, Chabad, Empire, Star K, it basically boils down to supply and demand, what demand there happens to be for that particular product in that market.
Right. Right now, I'm talking now not as a professional as someone that works in the industry. I don't know numbers, I don't know anything, but to my understanding, most of the meat now that's coming in from Uruguay or Mexico is Bais Yosef Shechitah, and that is much cheaper than the American meat that's here because it's a cheaper product. You understand? So you can't say that Chassidisher meat or Bais Yosef meat is more of a money if it's not an part of supply and demand. The bottom line is supply and demand. Cheek meat, flanken, sweetbreads, pickled tongues cost more because of supply and demand. It's not because Chassidus Litvish or something like that.
So the same thing, it's not just by IFIS, it has to do with meat as well, the same rules you're saying.
Of course. That's the whole economy. And plus meat is a commodity, so that's why meat goes up and goes down. It really never comes down, but it keeps on going up for that reason, because it's a commodity. And Lamaisi, you have to understand, kosher meat is more money because, first of all, we only take the top half and not the bottom half. Remember, we have to compete with the goyim that shoot animals, don't eat mashgichim, boidik sakinim, bdikas befnim, and bachutz, right? And all these people, the Hamachshir, they don't have to pay for that. So they shoot them in the head, Shalom Yisrael, and then it saves them thousands of dollars. So what happens is that when a kosher plant shechs
and the bottom half goes to the Goyish market, they have to compete with the Goyim that are shooting. That's what raises the price of the meat.
Okay. In your opinion, and I don't know if you may not have any knowledge, do you find if somebody wants to be makbid on a lot of the chumras that are brought either in Shulchan Aruch or the Paiskim, that let's say the majority of the shchitas from what we've spoken to are not makbid on, are there any that you know smaller shchitas that are makbid on chumras, like bedikas tzaimis hagidin, bedikas arayas by oifis, bedikas of etc. I can go through. Are there, or is it just basically one standard set of shchitas in America?
So let me explain you something. In my store, I sell all different types of shchitas. I sell Birdsboro, I sell Mealmot, Alley, I sell Marvard, I sell Solomon's, and I sell something called Pella. Now, Franklin's chickens, everybody knows. Now, what's the difference? For Franklin's is $1 more a pound across the board, or more. But the reason is because Franklin's Shechitah only checks 2,000 chickens a day that I know of. However, Kiryas Yol, Birdsboro, checks 50,000 chickens a day, and Empire checks 100,000 chickens a day. This is based on numbers. You know, give 10, give 20. I'm not saying exact numbers because I don't know, but that's why on a smaller shechita, you have more cost. That's why it costs more money. So you want to ask me a question. I deal with a lot of Rosh Hashivas, a lot of frum people. You want to know if the frum people and the Rosh Hashivas and the Rebbes are makbid? Yes. They're makbid because they are makbid.
Well, what are they makbid on? Baruch, what are they makbid on?
They're makbid. They're makbid to make sure that everybody knows you have a small yeshiva or a big yeshiva. If you have a small yeshiva, you know they're metafel more with the bachrim. It's much easier for a bachrim to steig than a big yeshiva, which a bachrim will get lost. That's the bottom line.
But Baruch, respectfully, you could have a small yeshiva that has a staff of
1,000%.
A staff of 2 to 50, and you can have a big yeshiva that has a staff of 50 to 250, and they'll have a much bigger staff. So I think that rule it's a sort of a lopsided, very arbitrary rule.
No, it's not a lopsided.
It's the amount of sheichtim per amount of chickens. It's the amount of time they give them so that they could do bedikas hasakin after X number of oifis. I mean, it's not just a matter because you could be understaffed in a small place and overstaffed in a large place.
That's good. You're right. I can't argue with you, and that's 100% true. But if you have 3 guys salting 2,000 chickens or 3 guys salting 50,000 chickens, I'm just breaking it down to you.
But let's say you have 100 guys salting the 50,000 chickens, then the numbers don't add up. So just saying, look, because it's smaller, it's better. I don't know about that. There are smaller yeshivas that may be better than Lakewood, and there are smaller yeshivas that are much worse than Lakewood. I don't think there's a rule like that. Are there shchitas that I don't mean that, Baruch. Are there shchitas that they come out in Beferish and they say, here are 10 coolest that we do not accept?
No,
we do not.
No one does that. What do you mean we do not accept it? I don't understand the question.
There's a lot of coolest that, for example, I'll start all the way at the beginning. There's a machlekes, how much bedikas. The Ramah says you only baidik reyes, and the Bais Yosef is makbid. You should do much more than reyes. Do we have shchitas that say we do not accept the kula of the Ramah? Right? Do we have shchitas? You don't have to be baidik. The time is hagidin me'akaradin, right? According to you could say it's the Marshal says even on a miyat eine matzui. He says Yirei Shemayim. Our minig is to be baidik. None of the big shlachtais do that. Is there somebody who says, well, we're makbid on the chumrah of the Marshal, we're makbid on the chumrah of the Ramah? Are there shchitas like that or not?
What do you mean most of the shchitas shlachtais don't? Most of the shlachtais do. They check in the morning. I think the first 300 chickens, and it's like how they check the strawberries. You see,
right, but the Marshal says you baidik every single one, right? So is there anybody who says, you know what, we're going to be machmer? Like, there's so many chumras. Do you know Shochet that won't do veal because Ramosha holds their treif? Or Yerei Shemayim shouldn't eat from them? Do you know Shochet that won't do stop the gens because there's the Taz, the Bach, the 100 Paiskim hold that the treif? Is there any who have a halachic difference in any of the Shochet to your knowledge?
No, not that I know of. Ramosha on veal had a stickle Torah that I personally asked Reb David and Reb Ruvain Feinstein, and they all said that the veal is good.
Well,
so I don't know the truth for Ramosha. I know the truth.
Shiloh's the truth is Igros Moshe and Ezed Dalet Simon Tzadik Beis.
Right, but that was a different way because the way they did it was a Shiloh V'Tar B'Lachayim, and they used to box them.
That's the second half of the tshuva. That's the second half of the tshuva. But he's also talking about they used to feed them the liquid food, which they still do.
Right. I don't know. I don't know that they do. I don't know. I'm not a buck in it, but everybody gives ashgach and everybody eats the veal. I mean, a lot of people do. Most people do. You don't eat veal. I sell a lot of veal, my friend. A lot.
What about gestopte gens? Do you sell that too?
No, I don't even know what that is. I know now.
Foie gras. Do you sell foie gras?
I do not sell foie gras. I don't know who that's got. I think it's under the OU.
Right.
And my Rabbi Hamachshir doesn't approve of it.
Okay. So look, we found one chumrah.
It's not a chumrah. It's not a chumrah. Maybe he just doesn't know what's going on in the Shlachtas there.
No, because there's many paiskim on the Shulchan Aruch who say you don't eat it because it's a shaila of Nika Vavesht. Do you know anybody who's makbid to make sure that there's no zrikas karav lavesht because of Nika Vavesht by either gases, dakis, or ifis? You know anybody who's machmer on that? Meretz Yisrael, because there are other Shechitahs that are.
Okay, there's a lot of people that don't eat meat, and there's a lot of people that don't eat chickens today. I know a person, I don't want to say his name. I know his name in Lakewood. He's a Buster guy in Lakewood. He's a Buster Rav in Lakewood who shechs by my Shechitah. And I'm a knocker for him. I sold it for him. And in the last 3 years, he doesn't eat chicken anymore because of the shaila of the zerikas, of the min, of the crossbreed that's going on.
Rabbi Baruch, thank you very much for sharing your expertise and your time with us.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Bye-bye.